Shocking new information has broken the internet in recent days about the unbelievable acts of treason that Obama committed while in office. Last week, hardcore evidence emerged how Obama worked hand-in-hand with ISIS terrorists to secure massive amounts of weapons and arsenal to their terror group. Then immediately after that report surfaced, alarming information revealed how Obama turned a blind eye to Hezbollah's drug trafficking and money laundering operations in order to appease Iran and ensure his Iranian nuclear deal would be finalized. Now the floodgates of another Obama scandal is blowing wide open involving the former president's disturbing ties to a Taliban crime ring, and now a furious President Trump is stepping with our military forces, as Trump's generals declare the gloves are off. Aiding and abetting the enemy of the United States is the textbook definition of treason, which is exactly what Obama did for the past 8 years. But in addition to emptying out Gitmo and putting Iran on a path to nuclear arms, we're now learning that Obama worked alongside the Taliban in Afghanistan to ensure that the terror group would become the world's top leader in heroin, where their enterprise is now generating billions of dollars for the terror group to carry out their operations against the West. The Taliban in Afghanistan has spent over a decade funding their operations from opium farms and their mass production of heroin. This was able to take place under the Obama administration, which refused to target their illicit operations. Obama allowed the Taliban to become the world's top producer of heroin, generating billions for the terrorist outfit, conservative Daily Post reported.
And now to Afghanistan, where today the Taliban claimed responsibility for that brazen attack we told you about last night, a failed attempt to storm the largest NATO base in southern Afghanistan. Several coalition troops were wounded. The Taliban finances much of its operations by selling opium, which is grown from poppies, which are right now being harvested. So here's the question: why are American troops now helping Afghan farmers grow that opium? Nick Schifrin reports from Afghanistan on a controversial new policy.
In western Kandahar, poppy farmers score, till, harvest their crop, and the Americans do nothing to stop them. U.S. soldiers greet farmers.
Can you show me which poppy field is yours?
They commiserate with farmers having a bad harvest.
Tell him I'm very sorry for his field this year, and hopefully he has a better harvest next year.
And in one case, they even paid a farmer $1,000 after U.S. and Afghan special forces burned his crop.
If you can come down to the base or on my next visit, I'll make a payment.
This is controversial. The opium trade is the Taliban's main source of funding.
Around here, this poppy isn't only a plant, it's the very basis of the economy here. Poppy grows everywhere in this area, and most of the farmers base their entire income for the entire season on this harvest.
And that's why soldiers ignore and encourage the farmers. If the U.S. burned their crop, farmers would blame the U.S. for their poverty and turn toward the Taliban. I'm not going to lie to you, this farmer says. If my poppy were destroyed, I would be very angry.
If we secure them having a good harvest, now they're going to get paid for all their hard work, and then we can deal with the trafficking afterwards.
And that is the new U.S. policy. After farmers get paid, try to capture drug traffickers. These troops have confiscated 10,000 pounds of opium before the profit reached the Taliban. One day the U.S. hopes to convince farmers to choose legal crops. Until then, the seeds of the insurgency will continue to grow in these fields. Nick Schifrin, ABC News, Kandahar.
Now President Trump is going to war and deploying our military in an attempt to undo the massive drug enterprise that Obama actively supported by targeting their revenue stream and attacking their opium refining labs. In light of this stunning information, Trump's military general said the gloves are off as Obama's treasonous alliance with these Taliban drug cartel members are being exposed. Since November 20, U.S. troops and their Afghan allies have been targeting the Taliban jihadists' opium business in their Helmand stronghold, the top poppy-producing province in Afghanistan, Breitbart reported. The U.S. NATO coalition in Afghanistan has pulverized 25 Taliban labs used to process opium and its deadly heroin derivative, depriving the narco-jihadists of $80 million in illegal drug proceeds in the first 3 weeks of an unprecedented counter-narcotics air campaign. Obama's illicit Taliban drug ring is only the beginning of scandalous information emerging this week. We all knew of Obama's backroom deal to put Iran on a path to nuclear weapons, but according to new breaking scandal, Obama was willing to do whatever it took to finalize the Iran nuke deal, even if it meant putting the lives of every single American at risk. Dennis Michael Lynch reports, according to Politico, the Obama administration turned a blind eye to Hezbollah's drug trafficking and money laundering operations, some of which were unfolding inside the United States, to help ensure the Iran nuclear deal would be finalized. A project led by the Drug Enforcement Administration, known as Project Cassandra, reportedly targeted the Lebanese militant group's criminal activities, which included gun and drug tracking equal to $1 billion. But by tossing a string of roadblocks holding back the project, Obama administration officials helped Hezbollah to grow into a major global security threat, bankrolling terrorist and military operations, the report added. In conducting its report, Politico spoke with former Obama administration officials who were involved with the anti-Hezbollah efforts. They claim Obama and his team stopped the U.S. task force from bringing down the criminal network. When Project Cassandra leaders sought approval for some significant investigations, prosecutions, arrests and financial sanctions, officials at the Justice and Treasury Departments delayed, hindered or rejected their requests. Political commentator and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer said, in light of these startling new details, that Barack Hussein Obama needs to be immediately arrested for his crimes against America. If a company did this, a CEO would be in jail right now, he stated on a recent segment on Fox News.
Well, of course the Justice Department objected. It was illegal. It isn't only the optics. It isn't only that they are just looking ridiculous in denying that it was a quid pro quo. Obviously it wasn't a coincidence. The reason that it was objected to by justice, there is a statute that prohibits us from engaging in Iran dealing with dollars. So they had to print the money here, ship it over to Switzerland, turn it into Swiss francs and euros, and ship it over to Iran. If a private company had done this, this is called money laundering. The CEO would be in jail right now.
Nina, big deal or not?
Thanks to Obama, not only has ISIS risen to power with the massive stash of American weapons they now have at their disposal, but the Taliban now has a multi-billion-dollar heroin enterprise they're now using to fund terrorism against the West. It's time for President Trump to crack the whip and go after Hussein Obama with a vengeance, and show the world what happens to traitors who sell us down the river in order to further the cause of Muslim terrorists who have vowed to kill us.
That said, on Friday, the major stock indices closed down a little bit as people took profits or losses to finish out the 2017 tax year. Come Tuesday, we will all be living under the president's new tax bill, like it or not. This past week, those living in high-tax states scrambled to take advantage of last-minute prepayment deductions, especially on state and local property taxes. To tell us what it means for your pocketbook, Bill Hoagland, Senior Vice President of the Bipartisan Policy Center. Bill, nice to see you. You know, we had this video of people spending the week between Christmas and New Year's rather than on vacation at the property tax office, lining up trying to prepay because they thought if they prepaid 2018 taxes, they could still deduct them in 2017. Turns out these people may have all been standing in line for not, though, right?
It depends. It depends on particularly on the jurisdiction, the individual jurisdiction where they live, and whether or not they actually know what their 2018 property taxes are going to be. So it's a little difficult to determine. Some of them may be able to deduct it. It just, again, depends on the individual jurisdiction they live in.
But conceivably, there were people who wrote checks.
Yes, absolutely.
And the IRS the IRS seems sort of oddly unprepared to answer these questions. I
have to believe that if you wrote a check for in 2017 for paying 2018, that somehow before this is all over with, you'll be able to get credit for that in 2018.
But before it is all over with, perhaps the keyword, one New York State official saying, I guess this would be the understatement, there was great confusion this week. And as you point out, there's great confusion about what happens on Tuesday or perhaps Friday, which is the first pay period, if you will, of 2018.
I don't think you'll see too much on the first of the year, early in January, but the withholding tables will come out at the end of January. People will start to see changes in their withholding predicated upon the tax cuts for 2018. So you'll start to see some of the results beginning in late January, early February.
Well, that's what Paul Ryan said. He said, look, take away all of the noise, take away all the talking points. The proof will be when the American people look at their paycheck now versus he said next year. You're putting when next year is February?
Well, my sense is, yes, February, because you'll have to go through the withholding tables. The withholding tables have to be put out, new withholding tables. If you're working, you're going to have new tax withholdings at that particular time. You'll start to see this in your paychecks beginning, I'd say, in February, March at the earliest.
We're in such the infancy. Even the smartest tax folks I know still haven't gotten all the way through this bill and figured it out. But what everyone refers to as a normal, middle-class, average American family, whatever that means, everybody has their own opinion. Is there anything they need to be doing differently next year, all of a sudden, off the top, vis-a-vis this new tax bill?
Well, the usual response is that talk to your CPA, talk to your tax lawyer, talk to the people who...
But what about people who don't have a CPA or a tax lawyer who use TurboTax? What do you do?
Well, I'd say TurboTax will be coming out with changes that they'll be able to incorporate into their taxes. But no, the bottom line is that don't overreact. You are going to get a tax cut. It's going to come sometime early spring through the withholding. You'll start to see this coming out.
But certainly for people who count on charitable deductions and itemize different things. I mean, there's some real changes here.
Well, particularly when you double the standard deduction, there may be no incentive to provide the charitable deduction that you provided in the past. But I would go ahead and make those charitable deductions nonetheless.
All right. Well, appreciate you being here, sir. All the best. And I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in 2018.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you. Happy New Year as well.